If you want to have a fun life, you have to meet mushrooms. The mushroom kingdom itself is a whole different kingdom. You cannot compare it to plants and you cannot compare it to animals. These mushrooms have lived for millennials. They've been used in traditional Chinese medicine, even in Ayurveda. Some of these mushrooms exist in Brazil, in the Himalayas. So, a lot of previous generations have used them. If you have a woman who's experiencing hot flashes, someone with brain fog, experiencing high levels of anxiety because they're in that perimenopausal stage, Reishi is really helping you to calm down that nervous system, to help the cortisol get balanced. Mushrooms are like sponges. Whatever they're surrounded with is what they receive. Taking the lion's mane, the reishi, and the cordyceps is a powerful combination.
Then you're unstoppable. What if the next big shift in women's health isn't a pill or a trendy diet, but a humble fungus hiding in plain sight? Today, we are diving deep into the world of medicinal mushroom and why they may hold answers many of us haven't yet considered. Hi, I'm Gayu Lewis, a board-certified integrative nutrition, health and menopause coach and the host of the Gayu Lewis Podcast. This is the space where we answer what's happening behind our hormones, from science to mindset to everyday stories that help women thrive through midlife. Joining me today is Romina Melwani. Romina is a registered nutritional therapist and a trained mycotherapist practitioner, specializing in immune health, gut health, and the use of medicinal mushrooms in chronic conditions. She's the founder of the Nutrition Collective, an online platform dedicated to bringing evidence-based education to healthcare professionals and passionate individuals alike. So, if you've ever heard of reishi, lion's mane, or cordyceps and are curious to understand what's all the fuss about it, or you're completely new to the idea that mushrooms can exist more than your dinner plate, then stay with us. Romina and I are going to unpack what medicinal mushrooms really are, how they work with your body, which ones matter in women's health, in midlife especially, and how you can safely explore them. Let's dive in. Romina, thanks for joining me on this podcast, and I'm super excited to know more about the mushrooms.
Me too. Mushrooms are my life. And I say, if you want to have a fun life, you have to meet the mushrooms.
You're talking about one part in the mushrooms. Mushrooms have a little, the other side of mushrooms, which are known for fun. So, what are we talking about now?
There's a very big difference between functional mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, the ones that I like to look at and study, and the magic ones or the fun ones. Yeah. So I'm not talking about the psychedelic ones. I'm really talking about functional mushrooms that can be used in everyday life and can truly also transform your life.
Brilliant. But before we get into any specific mushrooms, I think all the women want to know which is the magic mushroom that's going to help me. But just wanted to understand what makes mushroom medicinal. Which mushrooms are classified as medicinal? And is that just a marketing strategy or there's actually science behind it?
There absolutely is science behind it. So what's important to understand is that the mushroom kingdom itself is a whole different kingdom. You cannot compare it to plants and you cannot compare it to animals. It's almost like a different species in the kingdom of living beings. Yeah. So you have your normal day-to-day mushrooms, so your portobello mushrooms.
The chanterelles and...
Yes, the chanterelles, etc. Yeah. And then you have your magic mushrooms, which are, completely for different use in mental health. And then you have your functional mushrooms that have very specific, unique compounds in them that are not available anywhere else, anywhere in the world, except in these mushrooms. And these bioactive compounds are what makes these mushrooms medicinal, because they have medicinal properties in them.
Okay. And how did you personally get into mycotherapy? What made you go saying, mushrooms, you're going to be my best friend?
So initially, when I studied as a nutritionist, I was like, all of this is really fun. Polyphenols, you talk about vitamin D, you talk about all of these different, types of plant-based derivatives we see.
Yep.
But I remember going into a conference and I went into this library of books that were there. And the first book I picked was called 7 Medicinal Mushrooms. Okay. And I was very intrigued because I was like, just like you, are we talking about the portobello mushrooms? Are we talking about the button mushrooms? What do you mean medicinal? And at that point, I was at a point in my life where I was experiencing extreme brain fog. I was working in finance, studying nutrition, trying to live in London, and it was very stressful. And when I read that lion's mane mushroom helps to clear brain fog, I was intrigued. I was like, I need to try these mushrooms. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I need to give them a go.
Okay. But, there's a lot of noise right now in the market in terms of there's adaptogens, there's the nootropics, there is the whole superfood. Where do mushrooms fall? In which category do they fall?
For me, what's interesting is that they fall into two categories. For people who don't have any chronic conditions, any diseases, if they want to improve their lives, they can use these mushrooms on a day-to-day to improve their lives. Even for children with immune problems, allergies, we're talking about a place like Dubai where, pollution is very high. You can use these mushrooms on a day-to-day to look after your immune system. But if you have a chronic condition, you can also use these mushrooms therapeutically in very high dosage to support and look after many chronic diseases. In women's health, I'm talking about infertility, polycystic ovary syndromes. I'm even talking about breast cancer.
Oh, but is this, like I said, is the study an old study? Like these existed, I'm assuming, but they're just getting into limelight now. Is there enough studies that are there that really show the benefits, or it's just very, new age?
So recently, it's only been in the last 10 years that we're seeing that all of the clinical trials, the peer-reviewed articles are coming out on mushrooms. And very recently, in the last few years, they've been doing clinical trials in hospitals using some of these unique compounds in these mushrooms to truly show you if maybe these mushrooms are reducing inflammation, or maybe they're increasing some of the immune cells to target cancer, for example. So right now, a lot of these studies are being done, but actually these mushrooms have lived for millennials. They've been used in traditional Chinese medicine, even in Ayurveda. Some of these mushrooms exist in Brazil, in the Himalayas. So, a lot of previous generations have used them in their teas to help them with various issues. It's only in the last 10 to 15 years that finally the West has caught up and said, let's do clinical trials on them.
Okay. Do you see a big future with these mushrooms, or again, would they be a hype and then die down?
I see a huge, huge future in them. Initially, when I was using these mushrooms for a lot of our clients and patients, I actually gave low-dose mushrooms to a breast cancer patient, and I monitored her for a couple of months. And she was taking nothing else but these mushrooms as a new novel addition into her day-to-day life. And I actually saw her immune cells that fight cancer, increase double or triple within a couple of months.
Okay.
So we're not just looking at this to be, something fun to add because you're brain fog. There's actually studies, and I'm seeing this in blood tests.
Okay. But who is the right person to prescribe these mushrooms? I am a naturopath, but, my naturopathy does not include study of mushrooms. You go to a regular doctor, they have no idea of these mushrooms. Who is the right person to actually guide you to say that, listen, you have these symptoms and this is the mushroom that you got to take?
For me, if you have a chronic problem, as I said, then I would definitely say a nutritionist or a naturopath that has dived into the world of mushrooms, or even a functional medicine doctor. And any other medical doctor that then wants to start learning about mushrooms can prescribe them. Now, one of the most interesting things about these mushrooms is 99% of the time, they don't interact with any form of medication.
Oh, really? I was just going to ask you that. Do they really work well with each other, or are they going to fight against each other?
No. The newest clinical trials being done, for example, in cancer, are being done with cancer patients on chemotherapy, for example, and medicinal mushrooms at the same time. And what they're seeing is a combination of these two is actually reducing some of the side effects of chemotherapy, but also helping to build resilience in their immune system.
Wow, that's something really, I would be really interested to know how that thing works out. Very, very, these are things that is nature's medicine that you kind of using to complement and, work with your body.
Absolutely, which is why I feel so safe using them. Now, of course, if someone is on medication, I would say, like you said, a nutritionist, naturopath, a functional medicine doctor, someone or a functional medicine oncologist, if you're looking at cancer, but even other types of conditions like, as I said, polycystic ovary syndrome. I see a lot of women and men with infertility coming in and using mushrooms to help them with this.
Okay. So we spoke a lot on a broader segment, but now I think let's dive a little deeper into which mushrooms. We said mushroom, and there's so many names in the market. You're so confused. There's reishi, there's chaga. I mean, correct me if my pronunciation is wrong, yeah? Then you got the cordyceps, and like lion's mane is one of my favorite. But are there any more like that? And what is the use of each of these?
So there are many more mushrooms, many more. We've only discovered maybe about 100 medicinal species.
Okay.
But what we're guessing is that there are hundreds of more species that haven't been discovered.
Okay.
But one or two other names that you haven't mentioned are turkey tail.
Yes, I heard that.
Which is a very powerful mushroom as well. Maitake, which is huge in blood sugar regulation. So I love the maitake for that. We are looking, obviously, you mentioned chaga as well. You have coprinus, which is another mushroom for... again, to reduce blood sugar levels that we're using in diabetic people. So lots of other mushrooms are there as well.
Okay. So, but can you give us a little bit more on to how do each of these mushrooms benefit?
So each of them have, with all the studies that are being done, each of them have a certain use in a certain area. So let's zoom into a personal case, someone with polycystic ovary syndrome. We know that someone like that has a problem managing insulin and allowing the blood sugar to actually get a response from insulin. And what maitake does, for example, it helps to increase insulin sensitivity.
Okay.
Meaning that, the pancreas is able to get a message that, let's produce more insulin to help this person balance their blood sugar level.
Okay.
So if you have a woman who has that, or if you have a diabetic patient, you'd look at maitake mushrooms for that.
And who would take a reishi?
Reishi, personally, is one of my favorite mushrooms.
Okay.
There's reishi. If we look again at, because you're a menopause coach,
Yes.
I'm getting into the hormones.
Yeah.
If you have a woman who's experiencing hot flashes, if you have, someone with brain fog, if you are experiencing someone who's experiencing high levels of anxiety because they're in that perimenopausal stage, I would use reishi mushroom.
What time of the day do you recommend taking these mushrooms?
The interesting thing is reishi can be taken at any time of the day as long as you're taking it before a meal. So 15 minutes before a meal, take reishi, and it helps you to really regulate the nervous system. But cordyceps, for example, now cordyceps is another whole different story. But imagine the cordyceps as the energy mushroom. That's how I position it. Because if you're lacking energy, you would say, let me turn to cordyceps. Now, if cordyceps is an energy mushroom, you can't take it in the day.
Yeah.
You have to, you can't take it at night.
Yeah.
You have to take it first thing in the morning. Cordyceps is being used in national teams of Olympics and different kind of sports performance. A lot of these athletes are taking reishi to increase ATP production in their cells.
Okay.
So if you're increasing ATP, you're increasing oxygen, you're increasing energy.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful mushroom for energy. You would take that in the morning.
Yeah. There's a lot of trend now to have mushroom coffees. Or is it the coffee mixed with these mushrooms? Like dirt tea and dirt coffee that's kind of getting popular. So are these just the mushroom powders, which is generally that's called as the coffee, or is there coffee along with it?
There's some recent studies done on using lion's mane with coffee that is showing you increased cognitive function by using both of them together.
Okay.
But you have to be very careful of what brands to use, which type of coffee mushroom, because you have to look at the what type of mushroom are they using, how pure is it, is it organic? All of these play a big role in actually having an effect in the body. Otherwise, most of them are using a lot of marketing techniques to give you very low dose, mushrooms that, God knows where they come from or what is actually, the impact.
Okay. So then kind of perfectly leads on to my next question. You get now powders, you get pills, you get tinctures. What is the right, thing for me to consume? Which of these are actually original or authentic or pure?
Mushrooms work in synergy with each other. So actually, if you took, for example, reishi and cordyceps together, that blend actually is more powerful for immune system, for your hormonal endocrine system, than just taking them in isolation.
Okay.
They're actually more powerful because each of them are communicating with each other. There's a very important point to understand with the mushrooms. The mushrooms are not, let's say, increasing your immune system, increasing your hormones. They're not decreasing either anything. They're not suppressing anything. We call them biological response modifiers.
Okay.
Let me break that down. What it means is that the mushrooms work with your body to adapt to what's going on in the body. So let's say if you have someone who seems to catch colds, get sick very easily, you know that they have a very weak immune system. If you give them mushrooms, they'll increase and boost your immune system in that moment.
Yeah.
But if you have someone on the opposite side of the spectrum, where they're experiencing an autoimmune condition, rheumatoid arthritis, all of these inflammatory bowel syndrome, all of these are autoimmune conditions. The mushrooms are not then boosting the immune system. They're actually helping it to reduce the increased inflammation in the body.
Okay. But again, which form? Is the tincture better? Is the pill better? Is the powder better?
For me, it's not about tincture, powder, or capsule. It's about the integrity of what's inside. So if you have a little boy, 7 years old boy who seems to have a weak immune system, they're not going to take pills, are they? You're going to give them a powder. You're going to say, look, I'll put this into your juice. Let's open the capsule, or let's take some mushroom powder and put it in your juice. If you have a cancer patient, again, how many pills can you give them? They're already taking 20 other medicative pills. In their case, you're giving them a powder. But if you have someone who doesn't have the time to sit and mix their drinks, give them the pills. It makes their life easier.
Okay. Kind of now coming into the midlife, my menopause segment in general, if you had a women in perimenopause, what would your suggestion in terms of, or prescription to them in terms of the mushrooms that they should take to help them with hot flashes, brain fog, sleepless nights, anxiety? You spoke about reishi. Is there anything else that they can take to help them, or is there specific ones, for a night sweat or for getting a good night's sleep?
So the first thing I do is, when you're looking at a perimenopausal woman, you're looking at someone, as you said, hot flushes, night sweats, brain fog, anxiety. Reishi fulfills a lot of these issues. There's been studies that are showing that using 500 milligrams of reishi extract will increase sleep duration by significantly for someone at night. So again, someone who's experiencing insomnia and waking up in the middle of the night, I would say take the reishi. When someone in perimenopause is extremely anxious and also is experiencing high levels of cortisol and stress in their body. Again, the reishi has been shown to reduce stress levels, and it helps to calm the nervous system. Okay. So for me, reishi is one of the key mushrooms I always give to perimenopausal women. But at the same time, someone in perimenopause, what they're seeing is an estrogen crash and a progesterone crash, and sometimes even a testosterone crash. So what you need here is the cordyceps comes into play, because I told you that cordyceps is an energy mushroom, but cordyceps also is the mushroom of fertility and hormone balancing. Okay. So again, think about the mushroom. They're not increasing estrogen levels or decreasing them. They're communicating with your hormones and saying, okay, what level are your estrogen at? Is it too high? Is it too low? And it's helping you to balance those levels. So for a perimenopausal person, I would think reishi and cordyceps. Without a doubt, I would take them together. Okay. Obviously, we talked about lion's mane and brain fog. It depends what kind of brain fog you're experiencing. But for me, I've noticed, I'm entering this perimenopausal phase right now myself. I've noticed taking the lion's mane first thing in the morning just helps me to feel so focused and balanced. And again, as we said, you asked me that question, do you take these mushrooms in isolation or do you take them together? Yeah. Taking the lion's mane, the reishi, and the cordyceps is a powerful combination.
Yeah. Then you're unstoppable.
Unstoppable, invincible. Okay. And again, with the reishi, what I like is, we as women, our cortisol levels, we rely so much on cortisol. Yeah. And reishi is really helping you to calm down that nervous system, to help the cortisol get balanced. And that's what you want. So for me, if someone tells me, oh, I can't take so many mushrooms, or maybe you don't find a blend together, then start with the reishi.
Okay. So if I imagine I take all these 3 in the morning, can I also take reishi closer in the evening, like you said, to calm me down so I can get a good night's sleep? Would that help? Can I double dose?
You can absolutely double dose. Actually, that's what I do. I will take my mushrooms in the morning.
Yeah.
And usually I'll start my day with actually, lion's mane coffee, because for me, my brain fog is not too bad. So I'm like, I need that.
Yeah.
And then I'll do the reishi and cordyceps combination.
Yeah.
But at night, you can absolutely take the reishi.
Okay. In terms of dosage, how does it work for someone who's now like really probably inspired after this podcast and say, oh, let me go to the pharmacy and start buying? Before we get into brands and understanding which one is good, but in terms of dosage, is it based on your body weight? Is it based on your age? How do you...
For you to actually feel an effect, again, it's if you don't have any chronic conditions, then you don't need to take a high dosage. You would just take, like you said, a mushroom powder. Now, firstly, before I get into the dosage question, I want you to understand what is the difference between a powder and an extract. A powder is you taking a mushroom, a full reishi mushroom, and turning it into a powder.
Okay.
And in that, you have the fiber in the mushrooms, you have, proteins in it, and then you have these compounds in them, specific compounds in these mushrooms that help do what we've said right now. And the extract, which is a whole other new technology nowadays, is you take these mushrooms and you specifically extract the bioavailable compounds in them for these conditions.
So that's like super strong.
That's super strong.
Okay.
So if you are looking at someone, let's say, with, let's take the example of the perimenopausal woman. If you are seeing, if it's just for sleep, you can take the mushroom powder. It'll have a beautiful effect on you. But if you're taking it for the hot flushes, you need the cordyceps for to get
keep,
more
energy,
energy, etc. You need the extract.
Okay.
So you would take at least 500 milligrams of cordyceps extract to feel a difference.
Okay. I've heard that a lot of these extracts are actually mixed with alcohol. Is that true?
No, not necessarily. It depends on the brand. It depends on which companies are using it. But a lot of these extracts are also done in many different ways.
Okay. Because I remember when in UAE, long time ago, we were not getting the permission because they were alcohol-based in general. That's why I asked you this question. So then going back to, like I said, we spoke about dosage. You said if it's basic, you just follow what the package says, right?
Exactly.
If it says 1 scoop, you use the 1 scoop twice daily. You mean you can use that
but
twice
daily. But there's another important thing when choosing your mushroom. You have to make sure that the mushroom is organic. Mushrooms are like sponges. Whatever they're surrounded with is what they receive. And so if you're growing these mushrooms, let's say at the back of a toxic Chinese warehouse somewhere, that is not the place. That is not where you want your mushrooms to come from. You want to make sure the mushrooms are completely organic because they need an organic surrounding because they're using everything around them to use it. Just like we talk about organic vegetables and fruits, you need to have the same concept when it comes to mushrooms.
Okay. Again, talking about mushrooms, you said, you got to get the bioavailable component in the mushroom. So if you actually consume like the fresh mushrooms, like, you get lion's mane now they look very cool as well. And you've got these people started using in their dishes as well. When you cook these mushrooms, do their strength reduce or it stays the same? And I'm assuming, by eating like 100 grams of mushrooms, not going to really help me. Probably I can say I had lion's mane, but is that still good or maybe hardly makes a difference?
No, the interesting thing about mushrooms is that if you cook them, they still retain their bioavailable compounds in them, especially the medicinal ones. Nowadays, I mean, shiitake is such an popular mushroom. Yeah. It's always existed. Shiitake is a medicinal mushroom.
Okay.
So shiitake contains very high levels of vitamin D. It's used a lot in heart health as well. We use it in a lot of cardiovascular patients who might have high BP levels, who are taking different kind of heart medication. You can actually give them shiitake to help balance their cholesterol levels, balance their blood pressure levels as well.
Okay.
And if you cook the shiitake, if you gave someone 200 to 300 grams of shiitake 3 times a week, it does reduce their heart conditions and helps with BP levels. So you absolutely see a difference even with the cooking. But how much of mushroom can you eat? in a week. Can you really tell me that you can eat 600 to 700, grams of mushrooms a week?
That depends, right? Like I said, that's why nowadays you get these fancy restaurants doing lion's mane, something. I'm like, I love mushrooms. I can eat them. I'm saying hardly am I going to get the value out of it. Okay, brilliant. Is there any risk of overusing mushrooms?
I haven't seen any ever. The only thing that can happen to you is, you might feel like you've had too much fiber, so you feel a little bit, bloated. But there's nothing else that I've seen. Some people will tell me, I'll have a mushroom, but I'm allergic to mushrooms. You're not allergic to mushrooms. You're allergic to the toxins, to non-organic mushrooms.
Oh, okay.
So, I wouldn't give them to someone who tells me I'm allergic to mushrooms. But I know behind that comment that it's not that they're allergic to mushrooms. It's where this mushroom has grown that has then caused them to become allergic to it.
Oh, that's very, very interesting. Is there any sort of mushrooms that people should avoid, specifically women in perimenopause, midlife, should completely avoid? And if they have any underlying autoimmune conditions, I'm just saying from a avoid perspective.
Absolutely not. Because again, the key here is the mushrooms adapt to your body. So if you have an autoimmune condition, the mushroom's going to do nothing to it. It's going to actually reduce the inflammation in the body. So there is no contraindications to the mushroom. That's why I find them so fascinating, because whether you have an autoimmune condition, which is too much of inflammation in the body, or the opposite side of the spectrum where you have a very weak immune system, the mushrooms have a stress, adapt to the body's stress response. It adapts to the body's immune situation. So it's balancing, it's harmonizing, it's regulating.
Okay. So now someone who's got really excited, who now wants to start exploring, what should they look out? Is there like when we go in, we buy a protein bar, there is a whole nutritional label, you read and you're like, okay, these are the ingredients, that's a nutritional value. Is there something specific that they should look out for when they go buy these mushrooms?
Number one, make sure your mushrooms are organic, 100%. If not, it's like God knows what you're eating or having, whether they're pills or powder. Make sure your mushrooms are organic. Number two, find out if you are taking it for chronic conditions, find out what molecules are inside. Because in the label, they should be putting what those molecules are. Now, I want to talk about the two main molecules that are in mushrooms that don't exist anywhere else in any species or any being.
Okay.
Number one is beta-glucans. It's a very specific molecule that is immune modulating. So most of these mushrooms should have the beta-glucans in them. And number two, you have a molecule called triterpenes. Now, reishi, for example, has very high dose of triterpenes. They're antioxidant, anti-stress molecules that are only available mostly in the reishi mushroom. So if you are buying the reishi, make sure it says that it has triterpenes in them, because if you're taking it for, let's say polycystic ovary syndrome, or you're taking it for hot flashes, you need to make sure there's triterpenes in them.
Okay. And you can, like you mentioned, I know you said that, but I just want to kind of reconfirm. If I take mushrooms along with my regular medicine that I'm consuming, it's not going to affect, they're going to fight.
No. Because again, the mushrooms are looking at your body. If it sees that your blood sugar has been balanced because of whatever, metformin you're taking or any kind of medication, it will not suddenly reduce your blood sugar even further. It will look at the body and say, well, I don't need to do anything here.
Okay.
So if anything, you need to make sure that if you are taking medication, don't waste your money and
buy the mushrooms. Yeah. Okay.
Do them in conjunction in a way where you're saying, well, maybe with your healthcare practitioner, you're looking to reduce your medication and increase the mushrooms.
Yeah.
And this way, you're really looking at working towards a more natural, balancing way of living.
Okay. Yeah. That's why it makes sense, because otherwise people are like, oh, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take that as well, because my doctor said, don't miss your medicines. Okay. Makes more sense. You spoke about beta-glucans, right? Can you, for a layman who doesn't understand this, what does it really mean, so that people understand the value that it provides?
Beta-glucans are, again, is the the single compound that is only mostly available in mushrooms. But the thing is such a complex chain because there isn't one beta-glucan in general. They're polysaccharides, but there are hundreds and hundreds of different types of beta-glucans inside these mushrooms. And there's only one other beta-glucan, which is available in oats.
Okay.
And it's only available in oats and nowhere else in any
food
sources. But mushrooms contain these types of beta-glucan that are immune modulating, hormone balancing. It's looking at every system in your body and trying to regulate that system. That's what the beta-glucan does.
Okay. So for any, like you said, for even with people who've got cancer, there is now mushrooms that kind of work. But are there any specific ones, specifically for women, again, due to the whole hormonal roller coaster, they end up having autoimmune, specifically with Hashimoto's. Is there any specific mushrooms that help?
So Reishi is a great one again for Hashimoto's. We're seeing a lot of using of turkey tail for autoimmune conditions that have shown great results in balancing autoimmune conditions. So I use a lot of turkey tail for that. And there's another mushroom we haven't spoken about. And I didn't want to confuse everyone because there's so many mushrooms, but this is a powerful mushroom that doesn't get its place and it's not popular like the lion's mane, but it's called the sun mushroom. And in Latin, we call it Agaricus blase, which is a beautiful mushroom as well. And this mushroom is used for autoimmune conditions. In Hashimoto's, in thyroid conditions, in rheumatoid arthritis. I'm always using the sun mushroom because it's got the highest amount of beta-glucans among all of the other mushrooms.
Oh, like you said, we didn't even know about this. So I know people can reach you, Romina, to ask questions about this. But is there any practitioner based in Dubai or in UAE that you recommend who knows about mushrooms and it can help people out?
I don't know anyone here. That's the problem. I do know a couple of companies that I think are using pure, organic, really using the extracts and extracting them the right way. But I actually don't know anyone in person over here.
Okay. Getting into your day, how does your day look like and where do the mushrooms come into play?
For me, the Reishi and the Cordyceps are my go-to. And actually 2 days ago, I ran out of the Reishi Cordyceps. So I need to buy some. But I literally cannot almost function now. I'm in that start of the perimenopausal journey where I'm noticing that my hormones are changing. And I was like, I need the Reishi, I need the Cordyceps. It helps me to keep balanced. So these two are my go-to. But to be fair, I can't start my day without the lion's mane coffee. I need that to feel grounded. I need that to feel like I can start my day. And then I get into the Reishi Cordyceps combination.
Okay. Does your diet need to change? Can you still eat meat and work with mushrooms, or do they?
There is absolutely no difference. If you are taking a mushroom powder, for example, mushrooms have very high source of protein in them. So it's a great protein source as well, the mushrooms. So for me, if you are a vegetarian, you can actually start using mushrooms as a way to increase protein intake.
Oh, that is fantastic to know, because women in general are always looking at, I have to have 120 grams of protein. And if you're able to kind of add mushroom into that and increase your protein intake, that's fantastic news.
And mushrooms also contain very high levels of vitamin D. The shiitake mushroom has the highest content of ergosterol in it.
Okay. Brilliant. We spoke a lot about the mushrooms, and we'll kind of come into little bit more into the brands, but I want to get little bit more fun element. We're getting into our rapid fire round. It's called Hot Seats, Cold Truth. Yeah. So
love that.
Yeah. So just quick, whatever comes into your head. Ready?
Yes, ready.
Very good. Describe mushrooms in one word.
Immortal.
Wow. Reishi or lion's mane, your ride or die? I have
Reishi.
I have to say Reishi. You're like, oh no, I can't stay without it. Okay, most overrated mushroom right now.
Wow, that's a tough one.
He's like, you're making me choose between my kids. Like
lion's mane.
Okay.
Actually, no, I take that back. I can't answer this question. Pass.
Yeah,
Can I pass?
You making me choose who's my favorite child, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Most underrated mushroom people should know about.
The sun mushroom.
One mushroom you wish everyone would stop misusing.
The cordyceps.
Powders, tinctures, or capsules, pick one.
Capsules.
One myth about medicinal mushrooms that drives you crazy.
That you can be allergic to them.
If mushrooms could talk, what would Reishi say to a stressed out woman?
Don't worry, darling, I got you.
Your favorite mushroom brand that actually gets it right.
My favorite mushroom brand has to be Hifas da Terra. It's a Spanish brand.
I think I met them they were there at the...
They were at the conference as well. Yes.
Yes, I met them. Your personal non-negotiable mushroom ritual. I think you mentioned this, but then we'll have that again.
Cordyceps and Reishi.
Yeah. And your lion's mane coffee in the morning.
Morning ritual coffee.
Yes.
Coffee is life, so I need that.
Quick, brain fog fix. What mushroom are you grabbing?
Lion's mane.
Energy without anxiety.
Cordyceps.
Sleep like a baby tonight.
Reishi.
If you wrote a book on mushrooms, what would the title be?
Wow, that's a hard one. That there is so much room for mushrooms.
I like that. I like that. Thank you. That was a quick rapid fire that we had from you. This kind of brings us to our last segment of the podcast. I call it the 1%. Reason being 99% of my podcast is all about women wellness, but men are a part of our lives too. So we've dedicated this 1% to them.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So what is your 1% advice to the men in our lives? What can men do better to support women?
I think men need to really put themselves and understand that in terms of an emotional capacity, women have so much to give and to take in and to absorb and tolerate. And I think that they need to create space for us to allow us to thrive. And I think that's one big thing. I think men focus so much on their own careers and goals that they forget that, women have, probably twice or thrice as much power to build them, and that they shouldn't underestimate them.
Oh, fantastic. Before we let you go, we want to know the top 5. You gave us the top mushroom brand that you think does it well. But if you had to give top 5 in terms of, could be pills, could be powders, could be, the extracts, top 5 companies doing, if people have to reach out or buy, which one would they be?
So for mushroom teas and for mushroom coffees, I'd say London Nootropics. They do some wonderful ones. Obviously, for me, Hifas da Terra is it's the only brand. There's another brand in America by Paul Stamets, has a brand himself in America. That's a great brand as well because he's a mycologist. So I have great respect for Paul Stamets. But aside from these 3, I can't think about anything else that I've seen out there that has high dosages, organic, clean brands that are able to extract what I'm looking for.
Okay, brilliant. Romina, before you leave, any parting advice for our listeners, specifically about mushrooms? If they have to give it a go, what would your advice be to them?
I'd say don't fall for the marketing gimmicks. Make sure you read the labels, make sure they're organic, and test it for yourself. You try the reishi yourself, you try the lion's mane, but give it a chance. Wait for a couple of days, give it at least 5 days to a week to see if you're having an effect or not.
I had to ask this question. You said about if it works for you. Do you cycle mushrooms like supplements, or you can continue taking them?
You can continue taking them. There is no problem. And again, it's, like what you said, Gayu, it's not about taking supplements all the time. Because if you're absolutely fine and you want to have an optimal living, you don't need the mushroom extracts. You don't need high dosages. You can take a powder, you can have a coffee, and you still feel a difference with the coffee. Like for me, the lion's mane in the morning, it really helps me to get in the flow.
Okay. And where can our listeners connect with you?
So I'm also the founder of Nutrition Health Collective. And if you went into our website, nutritioncollective.co.uk, you can connect with us. You have any mushroom questions, I'm more than happy to take them. We also are on Instagram. We have a UAE handle and an international handle.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I think I love the information that you gave us about mushrooms. Kind of makes me more excited in terms of how I'm going to start incorporating them in my diet. I like I said, I love looking at new things. And if they are nature's gift, I'm very, very happy to take them. So thanks a lot for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me.
If there's one thing that got clear today is that sometimes the most powerful tools for women's health don't come in a bottle. They come from nature, intelligence, and thousands of years of quiet wisdom. If this episode made you rethink mushrooms, learn something new, or realize you've been buying the wrong supplement all along, share it with a friend who needs the same wake up call. Conversations like this are the only way women can grow and understand better. And if you're new here, hit follow. This podcast is where midlife finally gets the space, honesty, and depth it deserves. I'm Gayu Lewis, and until next time, menopause, why pause? Let's play.